Live from the Panera Studios, it's the Reading with Robin show, brought to you each week by my friends at Panera Bread, where their Pink Ribbon Bagel campaign just started to support Breast Cancer Awareness Month. You can support local breast cancer charities just by purchasing a Pink Ribbon Bagel throughout October. So go to your local Panera Bread and support this amazing campaign with the Pink Ribbon Bagel all throughout October. Panera is my favorite place to stop by for a cup of coffee, hang out with friends, and it's a great place for book clubs to meet. It's all at Panera Bread. And now, enjoy the show. It is a huge day. It is Pub Day, and there's nothing like Pub Day. And I am so excited. Jodi Picoult and I go way back before the pack. Salem Falls, perfect match. 19 Minutes, The Storyteller, which I last talked about staying up all night reading. And I do remember the email she sent saying about talking about this brand new book that she was working on. And at the time, I don't even remember the title, but here it is, Pub Day, Tuesday, October 11th, Small Great Things. And this one, you've out-Picoult'd yourself. Welcome back to Reading with Robin, New York Times best-selling author, my friend Jodi Picoult. What a treat.
Well, thanks for having me back.
So excited. I was looking through my emails, and I do remember you saying about this topic that you were tackling in your next book. And so I've been so excited, and when the galley first arrived, I mean, I just couldn't sit down fast enough to read this book. And where to start? And Jodi, everybody go to Jodi's Facebook page. Also follow her on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere on social media. And I always say nobody gets back to her readers like Jodi Picoult does. They love you. So this book, I was reading, also go to jodipicoult.com, the author's note. I mean, we could spend the whole time talking about your author's note. There's so much here in this book. The story, I mean, what you want readers to know before they sit down with this book and what you expect to hear from people. But just that this was a story that you wanted to write so many years ago, and I read that it was, 20 years in the making of the right story to talk about race, prejudice, and what's going on today. So just let's start there.
Okay. So I started writing a book about race 20 years ago. And I was working in New York. There was a true news story. It was about an African-American undercover policeman who was working on the subway and was shot 4 times in the back by his white colleagues, even though he was wearing what's called the color of the day, meaning a little wristband that identified him as an undercover cop. And I was really, deeply upset when I heard about this, and I started to write this book, and ultimately I put it aside. I just couldn't manage to create authentic characters, and I really struggled with whether I had the right to write this book. I am a white woman. I will never know what it's like to be a person of color in this country. It's not my story to tell, and more to the point, there are so many fantastic African-American authors who are doing that and doing it really, really well without my help. But then over the years, I would think about writing about racism again, and I would play devil's advocate with myself. I would say, well, I don't get it. I write all the times in the point of view of people I'm not. I write as men. I write as school shooters. I write as rape victims and Holocaust survivors, and I'm not any of those things either. So what's so different about this? Well, it's that race is different and racism is different, and it's really hard to talk about without offending people. So as a result, often we just choose not to talk about it at all. Then 2012 rolled around, and I stumbled across yet another story. This was in the news from Flint, Michigan, and it was an African-American nurse with 20 years of experience on the labor and delivery ward who had helped deliver a child, and the father called her supervisor in and said, I don't want her or anyone who looks like her to touch my baby. And he pulled up his sleeve to reveal a swastika tattoo. Well, the hospital put a note in the baby's file saying no African-American personnel to care for this infant, and sure enough, the nurse sued, and she settled out of court, and I hope she got a giant payout. But it made me think, what if? What if something had happened? What if she'd been the only medical professional around when something went wrong? What if she had to choose between following her supervisor's orders or saving a baby's life? What if, as a result, she wound up on trial with a white public defender who, like me, like you, like many people I know, would never consider themselves to be a racist? What if I could tell the story from the points of view of three narrators, from the African-American nurse, the white public defender, and the skinhead dad, as they all had to face their beliefs about power, privilege, and race? And suddenly I knew I was going to actually finish this book. And the reason was twofold. I was writing to a different audience, and I was writing for a different reason. I was not writing to tell people of color what their lives are like. That's not my story to tell. It's not right for me to do that. And, like I said, there are plenty of other voices of color who are doing it very, very well. I was writing to white people, people who look like me, people who can point to a skinhead very easily and say, that's a racist, but find it much harder to point to themselves and say the same thing. And ultimately, racism is not just about bias. Racism is about privilege and power. And the truth is that if you live in America and you are born white, you hold all the winning cards. And just the simple fact of the color of your skin means that you've had opportunities and advantages living your life that perhaps exist because a person of color directly did not have those advantages. And that's something that we don't often think about or talk about, mostly because we don't have to. If you're white, you don't talk about racism at the dinner table every night. It's not a matter of life or death. If you have black friends and you say, how often do you talk about racism with your kids? They're going to tell you every single night.
It was chilling reading all of this on your website. Like all of your books, they make you think and learn, and the discussions, and that's ultimately how, we learn and evolve, hopefully, is through education and talking. And I'm on the phone with Jodi Picoult. Small Great Things, just out, hitting the shelves. Everybody will be talking to each other about it and sharing it. This is one of those books that I cannot imagine the conversations that will be going on. And I mean, just listening to you and also reading about your author's note and makes me think about things like that, as you say.
Yeah, and like you said, you talked about my books educating people. I think the reason this book took such a toll on me and was really so life-changing for me was because I couldn't ask my readers to unpack their own biases if I hadn't done it myself.
Wow.
And I really, I thought I was a good person. I'm open-minded. I never would have considered myself to be racist.
Things. Right.
But writing this book required me to take a good hard look at myself, to go to racial justice workshops, to find that I was not nearly as blameless as I thought I was. I was also incredibly fortunate to have a collection of women of color who sat down with me for hundreds of hours of interview tape so that they could talk about their fears, their hopes, their successes, their failures, and they were so kind to overlook my ignorance about their lives and to share all this with me. And they also did me the ultimate gift of being sensitivity readers, of making sure that when I wrote the book, Ruth's voice was accurate and authentic. Without them, I could not have written this book and should not have written this book.
Well, you pay such tribute to the people you write about and the amazing amount of research. And when we talk about Jodi Picoult novels, those are some of the things that come up, the research, the really getting into somebody, a character's skin, understanding. And this is a whole other level. Clearly, I can hear the passion, and I know from reading your website and knowing you, and you are such a good person, but I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
Like, you can be a good person and still say, I'm a racist because I'm white. You may not. This is the best way that I have found to describe it. You know those moving walkways at the airport?
Know them well.
Right. So you know how if you stand on the moving walkway, you're still going to get to a certain endpoint. If you walk on the moving walkway, you're going to get there faster. So a skinhead is an active racist. That's someone who's going out of their way to be offensive and biased. They're walking on the moving walkway. Now, if you choose not to talk about racism with your white friends, if you don't bring up race, if you don't acknowledge the role that you have in it as a white person and look at the privileges that you've had, you are standing still on that moving walkway. And you're still going to wind up at the same place with all the same advantages and in a world where opportunities come easily to white people and are a little harder for people of color to attain. To actually be someone who is fighting against racism, you need to turn around and start running.
You really, you don't just have to read Small Great Things. You have work to do, and you talk about that on the website. And it is, I mean, because we see what's going on all around us in the news, overhearing conversations, letting a joke slip by that's totally inappropriate, all of those things. And you mentioned things that, active roles to take in this, and again, and this is a book, this is a novel. This is so much, this is just like a movement of a novel. I'm going to call this one the Picoult Plots, because it is that.
You call it whatever you need to, Robin.
What I was doing, reading it, like there's the plots and then there's the plots, and it's Small Great Things. Visit JodiPicoult.com. Find her Facebook page. You can go to Jodi Picoult and see where she's going to be in this country and all around the world, which is where they send her. Random House is just the most amazing team you have there, and they're so supportive and so behind this book, and loved reading all of that. Follow her on Twitter and on Instagram. But I was reading about that you enrolled in the social justice workshop. I mean, you really go above beyond. You could feel the personal attachment to this. And you've always done these amazing interviews and embedded yourself, really.
Right.
But, what was the most surprising thing about and meeting with so Sammy brought you, your daughter brought you skinheads to talk to. I mean, what a family you have.
So the most surprising thing for me about going to the racial justice workshop really was leaving in tears every night, because here again, like I said, I thought I was a nice person. I thought I was a good person. I thought, and like I said, I still am, and I know I am, but I have work to do, and I'm on a journey, and everyone's on a different point of that journey, and there are some people who haven't figured it out yet or haven't taken that first step. That's okay. Racism is systemic and institutional, but it's both perpetuated and dismantled in individual acts. And in that way, we can individually make differences. So for me, sitting there at this social justice workshop and hearing this woman of color say how tired she was, how exhausting it is to wake up every morning and have to put on a mask so that she is the person that these other white people need her to be. Wow. She needs to fit into the construct of what they think a good African-American person is. And that's tiring, because she never gets to be herself. She's always on guard. Or the woman who was Asian American who started to cry talking about the love-hate relationship she has with eyeliner because of her own features. And these are things that I don't have to think about. Or the women that I sat down with to interview, the new mom holding this beautiful newborn baby, an African-American woman with the cutest little baby, and she came in tears to talk to me because there had been a shooting by police of an unarmed black youth, that boy, and she said, I have a black son. How am I supposed to keep him safe? How do I teach him? What do I teach him? And I said to her, you can't teach him to not be black. He's not the one who needs to be taught.
Well, that's the thing. That's where
and it is. It's us. It's the white people who need to be taught. And then, of course, as you mentioned, in addition to sitting down with people of color, I also was interviewing two former skinheads, one who did come to me through my daughter because she heard him give a talk. He works now for the Simon Wiesenthal Center in L.A.
That is amazing.
I know.
So many
story is amazing.
The stories within your stories, and I'm speaking with Jodi Picoult, her brand new novel, Small Great Things, out by Random House today. But your books make me want to learn more and find out more things. I was reading that about the former skinhead and who he married and what the work he's doing.
Yeah, he's married to a Jewish woman. He now works at the Simon Wiesenthal Center after years of running with a very violent crew in L.A. subway where he beat up and left a gay man for dead on the curb. He wound up giving up this life of hate for various reasons, and then he started working for the Wiesenthal Center talking about leaving a hate group. And one day he's in the cafeteria and he sees a man who also works at the Wiesenthal Center, like as a docent giving tours, and it is the man he left for dead, this gay man.
Unbelievable.
And they wound up sitting down, talking things out. They are now friendly, and they give talks every day together. And, that to me is very moving. The things that I learned from him and from this other gentleman who also has left the movement and now helps the FBI find cells of white supremacists, which are not as easy to identify anymore. They're not walking around in their Doc Martens with their suspenders. They look just like us. Their hair is grown out, and they're basically on the Internet or stockpiling weapons for the racial holy war that's coming. And the things they told me were there are things that I can't. There was everything blew my mind. I would say the two things that were the most shocking to me were I asked them about the KKK, and they said the KKK is currently a joke. People make fun of it because they're the old guard. The new guard of the KKK is the Tea Party. And they held up two speeches. They showed me two speeches, one by the KKK from the 60s and one by a Tea Party candidate. They were verbatim identical with a few changes. Namely, the word Jew is now federal government. The gay slur is now social ilk of the country, and the N-word is welfare.
Well, it sounds kind of like the Armenian genocide and the Holocaust, and those comparisons. It's chilling, and especially
it's history repeating itself.
Exactly, and when you hold it up like that and you substitute those words out, I mean, how a thinking person can't look at that and say, well, there's no connection there. Well, of course there is, and it's subtle, and it's infiltrating, and again, there's just you just want to sit down and read a book. This is one to read. But, you can't just, this is an active read. This is just an important active read. And I loved this Ruth character. I mean, I know that you said you spoke to so many people who told you got it right, and you had this attachment to getting it right and this really responsibility and in all things the way you tackle them. But just I want to meet Ruth, and I know authors will say yes, it's fiction. I made it up, and you get this whole story, and then there's the we're never giving away, and we're not giving away too much anyway because there's so many things around this small great things, this brand new novel to talk about. And, you can read it in your book clubs, read it with your friends, share it with everybody, be out and about with it, have people ask questions. The cover is another dazzling cover. These, I guess, Pantone color, is that what that's supposed to be? That's what
they look like to me.
Yeah.
I love the concept of it. I love the idea of all the colors, and I love the colors that are missing, the blank ones.
Exactly, and that's what you want. We have to fill in the blanks and talk about these things. And I can, your tour is going to, I can only imagine the discussions, right? And you say you expect some pushback. I mean, look, you can't talk about race without saying something wrong. And my message to you is this. That's okay. I'm going to say something wrong. I can promise you that sometime in the next 30 days I'm going to screw up. And, it's my job to hear someone tell me I did it wrong, which I assume will probably be a person of color, and I'll say, thank you, I'm learning from this. Yes. Learn, and then do learn from it, and then get back up and start talking. Apologize, learn from it, and move on. It is far more important to make the mistake than to not talk about it at all. Do nothing. Well, and that's the thing, and I think that's why you were talking about things that we're able to talk about in so many difficult topics that you have undertaken in your novels through the years and characters that you've written about, but it's the uncomfortable. And I guess the older I get, the more I realize it is okay to say I'm sorry, and I didn't know, and I can learn, and I can do better. And you also talk about...
And here's a super easy thing to do. If you have readers out there, and I know, Robin, I know you have readers, if you are not ready to take that step and sit down with someone who looks like you to talk about racism, and that's, I get that. That could be a scary thing to do. Go look at your bookshelf. Ask yourself how many authors of color are on it. And if the answer is not that you are reading an author of color for every white author that you read, why is that?
Interesting.
When was the last time you read an author of color? There are so many incredible voices out there.
Well, I have your list right here. It's funny you should say that.
And
I love that.
Here's why it's so important, because I am writing to talk to white people in this book. That's my audience. But ultimately, if this book does make you question your own beliefs about race and power and privilege, just like the narrators do, look inside yourself and then go and find a voice of color who can tell you what it's like to live in America as a person of color. Because, that I can't do. I can give you Ruth as a vehicle for understanding yourself. And I can make sure that Ruth's voice is as accurate and as authentic as possible by having sensitivity readers, go through her with a fine-tooth comb and teach me everything I possibly could know in order to write her voice with accuracy. But ultimately, the people who can tell you what it's like to grow up black in this country are black writers. Or Asian American in this country. They're Asian American writers.
I love Latina. That nothing like a Jodi Picoult suggestion, and the suggestion is read, something you can do. And some of the amazing writers that you include on your list and who line my shelves.
Right, good for you.
Of course, Celeste Ng, Colson Whitehead, Christina Enriquez. You have Lisa C. here, Roxana Gay. So many of my favorites. Juno Diaz. Just actually was talking to somebody about Juno's books. Jacqueline Woodson's new book, Brooklyn, or something Brooklyn. And I might add to this list, and I know you said, shall I go on, you have here. I would add Mira Jacob. Have you read Sleepwalker's Guide to Dancing?
I haven't read it.
Put Mira Jacob on your list.
I will.
And I wanted to ask you, too, name one that everybody else should be reading after Small Great Things, and including Small Great Things, because...
I actually literally 2 days ago put down The Underground Railroad. I just finished it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was in the elevator when the women were running up when Oprah picked Colson Whitehead's undergrad. I was in the elevator I took the picture. I was like, wow, this is a moment. But so you love that Colson Whitehead.
I loved it. I was just so incredibly blown away.
But I love that suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go to your shelf, see what you're reading, and have some diversity going on your to reflect the world that we live in, and talk to people, and read this with your book clubs with your friends, and visit Jodi's site, jodipicoult.com. Find her on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and go to her site to see where she's going to be speaking and reading. You have so many events going up, and I will see you December 15th at the open house with Random House.
Wonderful.
So, those tickets are on sale, and actually they'll probably be gone when people are hearing this, but I will see you there, and I wish you well on this journey, and I'll be tweeting and chatting with you, and thank you so much for this amazing interview and this gorgeous, important, dazzling Picoult plotzing kind of book.
Oh, thanks so much, Robin. Thanks for spreading the word.
Oh, that's what I love to do, and it's a joy, and until the next time, thank you, Jodi.
All right, take care.